When we talk about child labor and forced labor, these are under the umbrella of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. But everything that's related to human trafficking is under the umbrella of the Ministry of the Interior and Public Safety. When we talk about the elimination of child labor, we have focused on strengthening the actions of training that would allow us to create a competent workforce so that, first and foremost, we can identify when child labor instances occur, so then we can raise the alarm and contact the networks that will allow us to address these cases, to prevent future cases, and then eliminate child labor in our country. This target is very ambitious, but it is possible if all stakeholders.
Estos planes de acción en Chile, estos planes de acción incorporan a las policías, a las oficinas especializadas en temas de niñez, a los municipios, a los empleadores, a las comunidades educativas y, por supuesto, a los trabajadores, entre otros actores relevantes en materia de protección de la niñez y la adolescencia. Adicional a lo anterior, durante el año 2020, logramos aprobar, promulgar y publicar la Ley 21.271, que adecúa nuestro Código del Trabajo en materia de protección de niños, niñas y adolescentes en el mundo laboral. Esta ley constituye un importante avance de nuestra legislación nacional para fortalecer las normas relativas a la prevención y erradicación del trabajo infantil, así como para otorgar mayores garantías y resguardos al trabajo del adolescente protegido. De esta manera, Chile hoy dispone de una normativa que cumple plenamente con los estándares internacionales y que nos permite dar fiel cumplimiento al compromiso que adquirimos como país pionero ante la OIT, organización que, hay que decirlo, tuvo un rol fundamental en la tramitación legislativa de esta ley, al realizar importantes aportes, lo que valoramos y agradecemos. Respecto de esta nueva ley, es importante destacar algunos aspectos. En primer lugar, se mantiene la prohibición de trabajar a todo menor de 15 años de edad. Se permite excepcionalmente que adolescentes con edad para trabajar, es decir, entre 15 y 17 años de edad, puedan hacerlo bajo determinadas condiciones y requisitos bastante estrictos. Debe existir siempre una compatibilidad entre la jornada escolar con la jornada de trabajo del adolescente con edad para trabajar. Además, no puede desarrollar nunca trabajo considerado como trabajo peligroso. Y por último, la ley fortalece y aumenta las multas asociadas al trabajo infantil, a las actividades catalogadas como peligrosas y al incumplimiento de los requisitos para la contratación de adolescentes. Finalmente, se crea además un registro especial de aquellos empleadores infractores en esta materia. Esta nueva normativa nos obligó también a tener un reglamento actualizado con un listado claro de aquellas actividades consideradas como peligrosas, reglamento en el cual intervino no solo las instituciones ligadas al mundo laboral, sino que también aquellas instituciones ligadas al mundo de la salud y encargadas también de los temas de niñez, entregando con esto una mirada mucho más integral a esta materia. Asimismo, durante este año internacional para la eliminación del trabajo infantil, como Ministerio del Trabajo y Previsión Social, hemos priorizado 3 áreas específicas. En primer lugar, trabajo infantil y población migrante, comprendiendo que esta población se ha visto mayormente vulnerable por la pandemia del COVID-19, para lo cual, en alianza con la OIT y con la OIM, hemos realizado diversos seminarios y esperamos en el segundo semestre de este año 2021 lanzar un curso sobre la materia. En segundo lugar, trabajo adolescente protegido en el marco de esta nueva ley que ya hemos hecho referencia. Y en tercer lugar, trabajo infantil y enfoque de género, respecto de lo cual es importante tener presente que el trabajo al interior del hogar que realizan principalmente niñas y adolescentes es un tema generalmente invisibilizado y que en el contexto de la pandemia se ha incrementado fuertemente, por lo que resulta fundamental que nos hagamos cargo. Finalmente, en cuanto al trabajo forzoso, es relevante destacar que en enero recién pasado y luego de una rápida y consensuada tramitación en el Congreso Nacional, Chile ratificó ante la OIT el protocolo 29 del año 2014 relativo al convenio sobre trabajo forzoso. Lo anterior implica no solo nuevos e importantes desafíos, sino que principalmente un reto en su implementación. Así es como actualmente estamos trabajando en la elaboración de un plan de acción nacional para la eliminación del trabajo forzoso, cuyo objetivo es poder cumplir dicha meta lo antes posible. De más está decir que esta pandemia nos ha impactado profundamente en distintos aspectos de nuestra vida y al mismo tiempo nos ha impuesto nuevos desafíos. Es un hecho cierto que el COVID-19 repercutirá en el cumplimiento de la meta de la Agenda 2030 y especialmente en su objetivo 8.7, ya que consecuencias como la pérdida de empleos, la disminución de ingresos familiares y el cierre de escuelas y colegios podría generar un aumento del trabajo infantil. Es nuestra labor hacer que esos efectos se mitiguen al máximo. Sin duda, aún nos falta mucho camino por avanzar, pero creemos que vamos en el camino correcto. Es aquí donde el multilateralismo cobra un rol primordial y la contribución de la cooperación internacional resulta muy relevante. El rol de organizaciones como la OIT, quienes han sido activos promotores de la recopilación y sistematización de la experiencia comparada, resulta fundamental, pues permite luego compartirlas con sus miembros y desarrollar importantes instancias de difusión de estas mejores prácticas como la que hoy nos convoca. Finalmente, terminar reiterando el compromiso irrestricto de Chile con el objetivo de erradicar el trabajo infantil, el trabajo forzoso y la trata de personas, a fin de que podamos avanzar de manera integrada en la meta 8.7 y principalmente dar fiel y cabal cumplimiento a nuestro país, a nuestro deber como país pionero de dicha alianza. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Minister. And next, His Excellency, Mr. Albert Nicola, Deputy Minister of Health and Social Protection in Albania. Your Excellency, if you could tell us about Albania's efforts to reach target 8.7.
Thank you, Ms. Shrena. Thank you to all of you and a warm greeting from Albania. I'm really sorry because I had to move to a new device due to technical problems.
Dispositivo porque tenía.
Just to mention to all of you that the problem of the exploitation of children and the labor of children was really a problem that we had to face even during communist time, but in that time it was a hidden problem. So we had to face this dramatically after the collapse of communism in the country. So I have to mention a very important fact that Albania has embraced the global partnership designed to make a strong contribution to the achievement of 2030 agenda on child labor and is fully committed to its implementation in the context of European integration process. In this perspective, in 2019, Albania became part of Alliance 8.7 as pathfinder country, showing its commitment to eliminate forced child labor and child trafficking by 2025. Assessing the urgency of action, the Ministry of Health and Social Protection, in cooperation with ILO and OSCE, presence in Albania, coordinated meetings and consultations with various institutional actors, relevant ministries, civil society, academics, and other stakeholders to identify national priorities to protect children from economic exploitation. As a result, it's very important to mention this, the National Action Plan for the Protection of Children from Economic Exploitation, including Children in Street Situation 2019-2021, was adopted and reflects the commitment of state and non-state institutions to prevent, identify, and provide protection for every child who is at risk or in a situation of economic exploitation. The purpose of the National Action Plan is that to guarantee the rights and protections of economically exploited children, including children in street situation, through the prevention, establishment of services, and strengthening the implementation of legislation by ensuring the protection of children victims of economic exploitation. I think it's very important to mention the fact of the street children, because this phenomenon is quite diffused in Albania, especially among the Roman community. That's why we have focused the attention to this phenomenon in coordination with the exploitation of children as well. So the National Agenda on the Rights of the Child is the strategic document which expresses the priorities of Albanian government for realization of all child rights, as well as unified framework for monitoring the progress toward the realization of child rights in every sector. Since 2017, Albania has a new law on the rights and protection of the child that provides child protection from economic exploitation. Minimum working age in Albania is 16 years old, but it's important to mention that the child can perform light work which does not harm his health, development, or hinders his child attending the school. According to the dispositions of the labor code, the child is protected from economic exploitation, as well as from carrying out any forced work within his family, at school, rehabilitation, and sentencing institutions, or in cultural, artistic, sporting, modeling, or advertising activities, which presents danger, deprives the education, harm his physical, mental, spiritual, moral, or social health or development. Significant legal changes have been undertaken to promote interinstitutional cooperation at the local level and to establish clear procedures for identification, immediate assistance, and referral of economically exploited children in the formal and informal sector, including children in street situation. The State Labor Inspectorate has been essential in advising businesses and monitoring their compliance with labor code. Local action plans have been drafted with the support of UNICEF and UN agencies to holistically address the issue of child labor and their protection from economic exploitation in largest municipalities of the country. These local social plans contain concrete objectives and measures in managing cases of children identified in economic exploitation situations, awareness campaign, as well as identification and the provision of service targeting the most vulnerable families and kids are worth mentioning here, such as registration of unregistered children, vaccination, especially in this pandemic situation, school registration, access to medical services, parental employment, psychological and counseling and support. Currently, Albania is working on the strategic vision for the next 4 years, and one of the main pillars of the new strategy will be protection of children from hazardous labor and trafficking. Concrete objectives will be defined there in line with Alliance 18.7 goals. A better systemic coordination of all stakeholders and actors at central and local levels is needed to maximize the impact of our collective efforts in finding the effective path to zero child labor. And the Ministry of Health and Social Services in Albania is fully committed to lead this process. So thank you. And last, I would like to mention the fact that if we protect the dignity of the human beings from the moment they are born till the natural death, this is really connected to the protection of the children in every step of their child. So thank you very much for this incredible and important attention that you have focused on. So thank you very much again, and wishing good proceedings to this very important event.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you for all your words and those commitments, and good luck with all the challenges that you've outlined. Next, we have a video message from Her Excellency Dr. Maria Flaxbart, Deputy Minister and Parliamentary State Secretary to the Federal Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development in Germany.
Esteemed representatives of the United Nations,
Syrian Arab Republic, Tajikistan, Thailand, Timor-Leste, Tonga, Trinidad and Tobago, Tunisia, Turkey, Turkmenistan, Tuvalu, Uganda, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, United Republic of Tanzania, United States, Uruguay, Uzbekistan, Vanuatu, Venezuela, Vietnam, Yemen, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Afghanistan, Albania, Algeria, Andorra, Angola, Antigua and Barbuda, Argentina, Armenia, Australia, Austria, Azerbaijan, Bahamas, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Barbados, Belarus, Belgium, Belize, Benin, Bhutan, Bolivia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Botswana, Brazil, Brunei Darussalam, Bulgaria, Burkina Faso, Burundi, Cabo Verde, Cambodia, Cameroon, Canada, Chad, Chile, China, Colombia, Comoros, Congo, Costa Rica, Côte d'Ivoire, Croatia, Cuba, Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Denmark, Djibouti, Dominica, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Egypt, El Salvador, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Estonia, Eswatini, Ethiopia, Fiji, Finland, France, Gabon, Gambia, Georgia, Germany, Ghana, Greece, Grenada, Guatemala, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Guyana, Haiti, Honduras, Hungary,
May I request delegations who have not voted to do so now by approaching the podium to cast their votes. The voting is now closed. No more ballot will be accepted. As announced earlier, while the votes are being counted, the General Assembly will continue with the plenary meeting to take up sub-item K of Agenda Item 120 and Agenda Items 117 and 30. The General Assembly has thus concluded this stage of its consideration of sub-item A of Agenda Item 118. I now invite the Assembly to turn to the note by the Secretary General contained in document A/75/909 relating to the confirmation of the appointment of the Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, issued under sub-item K of Agenda Item 120. Section 2, paragraph 27 of General Assembly Resolution 1995 of the 19th session of 30th of December 1964 provides that the Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade Development shall be appointed by the Secretary General of the United Nations and that the appointment shall be confirmed by the General Assembly. In paragraph 2 of this note, pursuant to that resolution, the Secretary General proposes to appoint Rebecca Greenspan of Costa Rica as Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development for a term of office of 4 years. The effective date of her appointment will be communicated to the Assembly at a later stage. May I take it that the General Assembly wishes to confirm the appointment by the Secretary General of Rebecca Greenspan of Costa Rica as Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development for a term of office for 4 years. It is so decided. The Assembly has thus concluded this stage of its consideration of sub-item K of Agenda Item 120. The General Assembly will consider Agenda Item 117, entitled Notification by the Secretary General under Article 12, Paragraph 2 of the Charter of the United Nations. In accordance with the provisions of Article 12, Paragraph 2 of the Charter of the United Nations and with the consent of the Security Council, the Secretary General has the honor to notify the General Assembly of matters relative to the maintenance of international peace and security that are being dealt with by the Council of the matters which the Council has ceased to deal. In this connection, the General Assembly has before it a note by the Secretary General circulated in document A/75/300. May I take it that the General Assembly wishes to take note by the Secretary General contained in document A/75/300. It is so decided. May I take it that it is the wish of the General Assembly to conclude its consideration of Agenda Item 117. It is so decided. The General Assembly will consider Agenda Item 30, entitled Report of the Security Council. The report of the Security Council has been circulated in document A/75/2. I will now deliver my statement from the rostrum. Excellencies, Mr. President, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the General Assembly as we consider the annual report of the United Nations Security Council. I would like to thank the Estonian Presidency who will present the report to us today, as well as the delegation of Niger for leading the drafting process of the report's introduction and the Chinese delegation for their efforts to prepare the report during their presidency. Excellencies, dear colleagues, the importance of today's debate cannot be overstated. The full membership of the United Nations through the UN Charter has conferred on the Security Council the primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security, one of the 3 pillars of the United Nations. We agreed that the Security Council will act on our behalf in carrying out its duties. This meeting today allows us to fulfill 2 mandates of the Charter. Firstly, that the Security Council shall submit to the General Assembly its work report pursuant to Article 24. And secondly, that the Assembly shall consider the report as stipulated in Article 15. The submission and consideration of the annual report is about fulfilling a Charter responsibility. And our debate today is critical. It allows us to assess the work that the Council does on our behalf, and it gives us the opportunity to hold the Council to account for its actions, and arguably more importantly, for the occasions where it fails to act. I commend the members of the Council for presenting the annual report in a timely manner for the first time in recent history. It is a positive step towards enhancing the Council's transparency and accountability to the broader membership. I hope this practice continues to ensure more predictability and thus a more deliberate treatment of the report by the General Assembly. As stipulated in the report, 2020 was marked by many crises and ongoing conflicts across the globe. that required immediate action of the Council. Despite the negative impacts on its work by COVID-19, I welcome the Council's sustained activity in both virtual and hybrid format to discharge its responsibilities. However, I also note with regret that there are occasions where the Council is divided and unable to rise to the challenge, and so fails to deliver its mandate to maintain international peace and security, with deadly consequences and untold human suffering. Excellencies, dear colleagues, in September, as we celebrated the 75th anniversary, global leaders reiterated that the work of the United Nations is more critical than ever, especially in light of the challenges brought on by COVID-19 pandemic. The world is looking to the United Nations for leadership as we build back from COVID-19. For millions around the world, the Security Council is the face and embodiment of the United Nations. Its success or failure to achieve its mandate is seen as the success or failure of the United Nations. And it's more crucial than ever that our efforts are efficient and effective, so that the United Nations, including the Security Council, is fit for purpose, so we can best deliver for those we serve. The report is only one of many interactions between Assembly and the Council. As you know, the Security Council Presidency and I are tasked with bringing forward the process to select and appoint the next Secretary General. Given the critical role that the Secretary General plays in ensuring that this organization is run as efficiently and effectively as possible, and given that the outside world increasingly expects the highest possible standards from this organization, I have committed to ensure that the selection and appointment process remains guided by the principles of the transparency and inclusivity. I hope the process can be finalized successfully next week, when the membership convenes again for the final decision. Distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, I look forward to hearing your views on this year's annual report, as well as proposals on how best to make it a more useful tool for General Assembly consideration, as we look to continuously improve the interaction between the different organs of the United Nations. I thank you. I now give the floor to the President of the Security Council, His Excellency Sven Jurgenson, to introduce the report of the Security Council.
Mr. President, let me begin by thanking you on behalf of all the members of the Security Council for your service as President of the General Assembly at its 75th session and for arranging today's meeting. Estonia, as the President of the Security Council for the month of June 2021, has the honor to introduce the annual report of the Council, A/75/2, covering the period from 1st of January to 31st of December 2020. I extend my thanks to the delegation of Niger for preparing the introduction to the report and members of the Council for their contributions to it. I would also like to express our appreciation on behalf of the members of the Security Council to the Secretariat and all others involved in compiling and producing the report. The Charter of the United Nations entrusts the Security Council with the primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. With the support of the United Nations membership, the Security Council has sought to discharge its responsibilities actively to support peacekeeping efforts and urge peaceful resolution of conflicts around the world. Despite the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, during the period under review, the Council held 81 in-person meetings and 269 video conferences. Exceptional working methods to allow for the continuation of the work of the Security Council for the period of pandemics were agreed by the Council and mostly reiterated during each presidency from March until December. The Council adopted 57 resolutions in person and by written procedure, and 13 presidential statements. The Council issued 46 statements to the press. During the reporting period, the Council was unable to conduct any field missions owing to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Council continued to focus on situations that affect peace and security in Africa, Asia, Europe, Latin America, and the Caribbean and the Middle East. Last year, the Council continued to consider thematic, general, and cross-cutting issues, including non-proliferation, threats to international peace and security caused by terrorist acts, the protection of civilians in armed conflict, children and armed conflict, peacekeeping and peace building, women, peace and security, and cooperation between the United Nations and regional and sub-regional organizations. The Council continued to receive briefings on the work of its subsidiary bodies, including its sanctions committees. The Council convened an annual open debate on its working methods in May 2020 to look at the implementation of Note S/2010/507 and to discuss how to ensure transparency, efficiency, and effectiveness in the work of the Council. In conclusion, I am pleased to say that despite limitations of the Council's working methods resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic, the Security Council managed to finish and adopt the report even earlier than last year. The Assembly's consideration of the submitted report of the Council is a very important aspect of transparency, and I look forward to the discussion of the report by the members of the General Assembly. I will convey the views to our colleagues in the Security Council. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the President of the Security Council. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Portugal on behalf of the Accountability, Coherence and Transparency Group.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am pleased to take the floor on behalf of the 27 members of the Accountability, Coherence and Transparency Group. Austria, Chile, Costa Rica, Denmark, Ecuador, Estonia, Finland, Gabon, Ghana, Hungary, Ireland, Jordan, Latvia, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Maldives, New Zealand, Norway, Papua New Guinea, Peru, Rwanda, Saudi Arabia, Slovenia, Sweden, Switzerland, Uruguay, and my own country, Portugal. We welcome the annual report of the Security Council to the General Assembly, adopted by the Council at its 8,781st meeting held on 27 May 2021 and contained in document A/75/2. We thank you, Mr. President, for convening today's meeting and the Estonian Presidency of the Council for the month of June for presenting the report for 2020. The ACT Group aims to promote a more transparent, effective and efficient United Nations, promoting the meaningful interaction of the Security Council with the General Assembly and greater transparency and accountability regarding the work of the Council towards the wider UN membership is a priority of the group. While in the past session we considered the report in a virtual informal meeting of the General Assembly, we are pleased that the present circumstances allow this Assembly to hold today's debate in person contributing to uphold the highest standards of transparency and inclusion. Today, Mr. President, the ACT Group would like to address both the process and the substance of the 2020 annual report of the Security Council, as well as future reports. First, the ACT Group acknowledges the progress made in the timeline of adoption of the report by the Security Council. We commend Niger for its dedication in steering this process and coordinating the report's introduction. The 2020 annual report is the first to follow the more precise timeline set out by the Security Council in its note by the President S/2019/997 of 27 December 2019. We commend the adoption of the report by the Council 3 days in advance of the deadline of 30th May 2021, established by the aforementioned note, and its consideration by the General Assembly immediately thereafter. Second, the report provides a valuable and factual overview of the work of the Security Council during last year, deeply impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. As mentioned in the introduction, the Council was unable to hold in-person meetings and conduct several field missions as a result of the coronavirus disease, which had an impact on its work in general and on its working methods. The ACT Group particularly underlines the importance of preserving institutional memory in the working methods of the Council in exceptional circumstances and encourages a continued discussion on the lessons learned, having in mind objectives such as preparedness for contingencies and the effectiveness, efficiency and transparency of the Council's work. We also appreciate the efforts made for a progressive return to the Security Council chamber and to the correlated working methods in light of the evolution of restrictions in place in New York pursuant to the COVID-19 pandemic. We nonetheless regret that during 2020, the sanitary restrictions affected the inclusivity of the Council, both for non-Council members and for other stakeholders. We welcome the introduction of clear headings on individual and thematic files. Contributions by briefers from other UN organs or the civil society, as well as those by non-Council members during relevant meetings, could also be better reflected. We would also suggest including details on the draft resolutions that failed to be adopted by the Council. The ACT Group also wishes by Council presidencies. These constitute important reference documents to reflect the views of members and to inform the work of the drafter of the annual report and the deliberations of the Council on the matter. Keeping that in mind, it is crucial that even though the President is strongly encouraged to consult with other members of the Council, the assessment should not be considered as representing the views of the